Joining us now is Johnny A. Johnny will be performing November 30th at City Winery in Boston. Johnny, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me. How you been?
Doing pretty well. Happy birthday, first of all.
Oh, yeah. The yearly reminder. Yeah.
So tell me about the upcoming show at City Winery. What do you have planned for the performance?
I'm really excited because the band has been off for a while because, as you know, I also tour with the Yardbirds, and we just finished a tour. And so I have two shows coming up for the end of the year. The one is City Winery. I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to be a great venue for Boston. You know, just the whole setup and the capacity, about 300, still intimate, really good food, really good wine, good vibe. So I'm bringing my four-piece band in there. And some surprises musically. I just think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. I always love playing Boston. I only get to play really Boston proper maybe once a year.
Yeah. City Winery, a new venue. They have a lot of great artists coming in there right now.
Yeah, they certainly do. I saw the schedule, and it's good. I think they are officially opening on Monday night, I think.
Tell me a little bit about the band that you have right now for this performance.
I am using a four-piece band. The guys in the band are Jesse Williams. He's playing bass. He also plays with Al Cooper, and he's kind of one of the A-list guys around town. On the drums is Ron Stewart, formerly of Joe Perry's band, the Joe Perry Project. And second guitar player by the name of Greg Tower is playing. So it's a four-piece band.
Have you been friends with the guys from Aerosmith over the years?
Yeah, my friendship with those guys goes back to, I think, 1972 is when I first met those guys. I used to work at the big music store in Boston called EU Wurlitz's when it was on Newbury Street. And that's when I first got to meet Steven and Joe and Brad and the guys was back then.
They were coming in and shopping?
Yeah, it was kind of right before they made their first record is when I met them, before they made the record that they recorded at, I think it was Intermediate. It was called Intermediate Studios at the time. I think it was 331 Newbury Street.
So in addition to your solo work, you also perform with the Yardbirds. When did you start performing with them?
I'm in my third year with those guys, so I think 2015 was the first tour, and we've done about maybe 6 tours together now. It's a great lineup, fun band. It's great playing those songs, and a very authentic sounding lineup. Kenny Aronson's playing bass, Mike Scavone on harmonica and vocals and percussion, John Iden on rhythm guitar and lead vocals, and then Jim McCarty, the original drummer, founding member, songwriter, is on the drums.
When you were growing up, were the Yardbirds a big influence on your playing?
Very big. Probably my second favorite band growing up of all time, right behind the Beatles, and probably the most influential from the rock approach to my guitar playing. I would have to say that 1965-66 period of the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck was very inspirational and highly influential on me.
Have you communicated with any of those guys about playing in the Yardbirds?
Well, I've met Jeff several times, met Jimmy a couple times, but when I had met Jeff and played with Jeff, it was prior to me working with the Yardbirds, so I haven't seen Jeff since starting my tenure with the Yardbirds.
When you're performing with the Yardbirds, is the rig that you use different from your solo rig?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I have actually 3 different type of rigs for different types of things. I have a setup that I use with my band, like the band that's going to be at the City Winery. I have a setup that I use with the Yardbirds that's completely different from that rig. And then I have another rig that when I'm doing solo shows, and actually starting January in 2018, I'm going out just solo without a band.
Oh, cool.
And that's a completely different rig too.
What are those performances like? Is it a lot of improvisation, or do you prepare pieces solo?
Well, the solo stuff is what I'm drawing from for the solo approach. Is it's a heavy emphasis on the British songbook of the '60s. So it's a lot of songs that inspired me and kind of stuck with me as old friends over the years, and kind of what they meant to me and why they meant that. So there'll be a bit of a living room experience involved with those shows, and telling stories about, seeing Chuck Berry at age 10 and seeing the Beatles in 1966 and seeing Jimi Hendrix in 1968, and just kind of those experiences growing up and why those songs continue to motivate me and pull at me.
When can we see the dates for that tour coming up?
I think as soon as I finish my last show with the band, which will be December the 1st, the night after the City Winery show, I'm doing another show down in Fall River at the Narrows. After that, right now I'm promoting those two shows. Right after that, we're going to do a little website revamping and then kind of announce this solo tour, even though I just announced it with you for the first time. We'll have the dates up on there, and there's already a West Coast tour booked, and there are a few New England dates booked already starting in the middle of January.
You saw Jimi Hendrix live?
I did, 1968.
Where was it?
The Carousel Theater in Framingham, Massachusetts.
No way. Wow.
Yep. I was right at I was so close, my chin was leaning on the lip of the stage, right in front of him.
Must have just blown you away.
Pretty much. I got experienced, all puns intended.
Yeah. So cool. I grew up right near Framingham, so it's interesting that Jimmy was there.
Where did you come from?
Holliston.
Where did you come from?
Holliston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a year there one night.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your guitar. When did you get the opportunity to design a guitar with Gibson?
Well, I had been endorsed by Gibson, let me see, starting in 1994, I believe, when I was working with Peter Wolf. And I became a Gibson endorsee starting from them then. And then after my first album came out, the Sometime Tuesday Morning album in 2000, it started to make a bunch of noise and, sold very well. It had a #1 single across the country on it and sold about 100,000 copies of that album. And I was getting ready to really start my second record, which after I signed my recording contract with Steve Vai. And I was down to Gibson all the time, was at one of their Summer NAMM shows, and the opportunity came, and they just were aware of what I was doing with Gibson guitars in an instrumental way with my music, and they wanted to talk to me about ideas that I might have. And we collaborated on it and designed the guitar with them. It was in research and development for about a year, which was from summer 2002, and it got released summer 2003, and it's still in the line. It's the second most popular signature model in Gibson's history, behind a Les Paul.
Wow.
And there's been actually 3 versions of that guitar that's come out. There's been one custom version and 2 different standard versions that have been released. And Epiphone, I just signed a deal with Epiphone, and last summer, an Epiphone version of my guitar came out as well. And we're working on something else with Gibson Custom currently as we speak, which I can't say too much about.
Okay. When you were first designing the guitar, what were some of the details that you wanted that you didn't find in other guitars?
Well, what I was looking for in a live instrument was an instrument that would complement several guitars that I used in my recordings, because I never used just one guitar in my recordings. And the bulk of my first album was done on a guitar called the Gibson ES295, which is a very big hollow body guitar. But I also used the ES335s and Les Pauls and Firebirds and L5s, a lot of different guitars. And when I first came out supporting that first album, I was using several different guitars that ergonomically had their own thing about them, and they were totally different from each other. And I found that a little unnerving. And I just really do not like to change guitars that often. I like to play one guitar. But the one guitar at the time wasn't able to cover the ground that many of the guitars did on the album. So that was really the impetus behind the design, was to try to get a hollow body tone that would allow me to get the big, beautiful sounds like on Wichita Lineman, and then be able to get a guitar that would scream and be able to play like Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix style on it too. So that's how the design and the idea for the design came about. And I was really happy with it. I think it's a fabulous instrument, and it still, works very well for me.
When they were first designing it, did you have to go back and forth a bunch of times with different pickups, different designs, and go to the factory or things like that?
Well, I was down the factory an awful lot in Nashville at the custom shop. And as far as pickups, no, I knew the pickup complement that I wanted, but there was a lot of massaging to the sculpting of the body and the neck angles and headstock angles and pickup placement, different components in the guitar, just even little things like how the pickguard is designed and attached to the guitar, and little details that most people might not notice, like, for example, the way that the headstock is tapered. It's much more in line with how one of the 50s Gibson would be, and I think that would be overlooked by a lot of people if they didn't know what they were looking for. But just a lot of little design elements in that guitar and details to make a guitar that, even though it was a modern guitar, would be something that would actually be something that probably could have came out in the late 50s and early 60s. It took a lot of the design cues and details from those guitars of Gibson's golden era.
Have you always been drawn to Gibson versus other companies?
The very first guitar that I bought with my own money was a Gibson Les Paul. I've had all kinds of guitars over the years. I've played all the brands, but I've always gravitated to come back to Gibsons. But I've had everything. I really have. Pretty much every major brand. I've had multiple models of those, and then I've used them, and they've gone through phases where I've tried other guitars, but at the end of the day, I've always really come back to using a Gibson.
What made you first want to start playing the guitar?
The Beatles. I was always drawn to music. Early on, I think my earliest musical memory is, 3 years old. My mom had bought me a small, like those little portable turntables, little 45 record players that they used to have in the 50s, because I'm 65 years old, so I was born in 52. So when I was a kid, I had one of these little record players, and the very first record that I ever remember spinning over and over and over to nauseam was Fever by Little Willie John, a song that came out in 1953. And that's my very first musical memory. And later on, I would listen to a lot of music of the day, like Everly Brothers. I love the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, early Elvis, but it was and I used to play drums first. And during those times, like pre-64, I played drums. I was a drummer for 6 years. I started at age 6. And but then when the Beatles came out and I heard I Want to Hold Your Hand and saw them on an Ed Sullivan show, that kind of switched for me. And I just always had a lot of melody in my head. And being a drummer, it really doesn't, it's not an instrument that facilitates melody. So I just kind of gravitated to the instrument of the day, which was guitar. And I had a natural aptitude for it, whereas drums, I was an okay drummer, but I took drum lessons, and it wasn't, I didn't have natural ability like I had on the guitar. The guitar, I didn't take any guitar lessons. And so anything that I've done with guitar, it's just been on my own kind of hacking about, whereas on drums, I did take drum instruction.
I think it's often that people start out on different instruments than what they end up being their main instrument. That it's almost like they gravitate towards one over the other for some reason.
Yeah, I just think, the music of the day when I started as a drummer, I was listening to guys like Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich and Sandy Nelson and, kind of the big beat drummers of the day, and then some of the surf music, when, obviously the Safaris were doing Wipeout, and, there was very drum heavy, kind of drum centric instrumental music, and that's kind of what drew me to drums. But then, like I said, once the British invasion came and all those melodies, from the Hollies and Jerry and the Pacemakers and the Animals and the Beatles, and, that just, the list goes on with those bands of how many great melodies and songs there were. I just got kind of sucked into that whole pop rock sound, and I'm still a sucker for. I love all kinds of music, and over the years I've morphed into from listening to British Invasion stuff, to British blues stuff, to prog rock stuff, to fusion stuff, to strict jazz stuff, to country stuff, and I love all kinds of musicalities. But at the end of the day, I am kind of a sucker for a well-constructed pop song.
What advice would you have for young guitarists?
Go to law school. Become a lawyer.
Yeah.
In music businesses, it's not the greatest business to be involved in, I think, but I think any true artist that is in it for the right reasons, you really don't choose to be in the arts. If you're driven to it, it's something that chooses you, whether you're a screenplay writer or an artist or a movie director or a musician or whatever. If you have a passion to it and you're drawn to it, it's almost like an obsession, and it kind of chooses you. I don't think I had any control over whether or not what I was going to be. I've never done anything else. Sure, I had some odd jobs growing up, but I never had a focus on doing anything else but music. But I think you have to be that driven to do it to kind of even hope for any kind of success. And the success that you get is definitely, that road is paved with a lot of disappointment. And I think you have to be resilient and, be able to take criticism and take rejection, because probably 85% of your career is rejection. And the music business, even from a commercial standpoint, is much different now. It's very, very hard to make a living playing music. But I'm too kind of old to change now. But I don't know. If I was coming up now, I don't know if these same opportunities would be there. You do have the internet, and you do have a wherewithal to get product out there, but there's also, look at the pool. There's so many people swimming around in that pool these days, and anybody can record in their bedroom with a decent quality, and anybody can put it up on YouTube, and anybody can get it out there. So in the old days, you might have been competing with your local scene to try to get attention from a record label to get a record deal, and then the record companies controlled the distribution and basically the radio airplay and all that other stuff. And it was hard to get to that point, but if you got to that point, there was a possibility that you might get heard. Now, there's really no record companies to say, and almost anybody is a record company, and anybody can get their stuff published in social media. So you're kind of competing with essentially any talented or untalented person on the planet. So it's a little bit more difficult, I think.
Yeah, it's strange because you have the internet to put your music out for a lot of different people to hear, but you're right. There's just so many people doing it at the same time.
It's almost like a personified version of music in the early 60s and late 50s pop AM radio, where everything is so damn disposable and everything was one-hit wonders, and there'd be a song by, I don't know, whatever, who would I think of? I don't know, even like Del Shannon, even though he had a bunch of hits, but, there'd be these artists that would come out and there'd be one song, someone like Bubble Puppy that had that song Hot Smokin' Sassafras in the late 60s or mid 60s. Never heard from again. But it's almost like that times 100 because those people, the new people, don't even make it to the radio. It's just kind of this YouTube sensation that's the flavor of the month or week or day, and then it's gone and forgotten. So I don't even know how you kind of turn that into income or any kind of financial way to make a living. I don't know. Or kind of overwhelming in a way. Sorry to get so heady with you.
No, it's good. I mean, it's a good conversation to have about the music industry now for somebody like yourself who's been in it for so long.
Well, I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm developing this solo act. It's just part of it is kind of musically wanting to challenge myself, and part of it is an economic decision. When you're carrying 4 guys around the country or around the world and paying for, it's not a band, it's a solo thing. So I pay the salaries, I pay for the plane tickets, I pay for the transportation, I pay for the hotel rooms, so it's expensive to do, and not every market you're successful in. So there's shows in certain markets where you have, great visibility and great draw that you can make very good money. And then there's other markets that you play in that, you can maybe just make enough money to pay the band, the hotel rooms, and get you to the next city, So part of the decision is, yes, musically, because I'm kind of have a penchant to go back to playing the chord melody stuff and having an intimate experience with my audience. So that was the driving force behind it. But one of the ancillary benefits is the financial thing, where the burden of carrying 3 or 4 people around is sometimes can be pretty daunting.
It's true.
Trying to put the budget of a tour together and looking at, you're going out for 3 weeks, and in those 21 days, there might only be 11 gigs. And what are you doing on all the nights off? And how you paying for the hotel rooms on those nights off? And, so there's a lot to it. So when you're asking me what advice I have for a young guitar player, I'm not really sure. My advice would be to stay in the music business. If I wanted the guy, if it was my own kid, I'd probably tell them to go to business school and try to figure out a way to be valuable to somebody from a business standpoint, which is what I did with my own daughter.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to be checking out the new tour that's going to be in early 2018, as well as the show on the 30th at City Winery.
Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to playing that venue. So thank you for the coverage, and try to encourage the people to get out there. I really appreciate it.
I will indeed. Thanks so much for speaking with me today.
All right, Sam. Have a great day.